Hey guys, welcome back to Voice Bootcamp. My name is Faisal Khan, CEO and founder of voicebootcamp.com. In this video, I'm going to discuss about the security group of Amazon AWS. Security group is like a virtual firewall that you apply to EC2 instance, be it a Windows or a Linux server, doesn't matter. Think about if you have a desktop PC and you have some sort of like a security software like Norton antivirus or Zone Alarm or some sort of firewall, third-party firewall defender. Well, that's what the security group is all about. It basically sets a set of rules that allows you to decide what traffic should be allowed in and what traffic should be allowed outbound. Now, every EC2 instance that you create, you must associate a security group assigned to it. You can always modify the security group. You can add port, you can allow traffic or deny traffic based on that. New rules that are automatically applied to all the instances. So whenever you modify a rule, it will automatically affect, or the changes will affect the primary network interface card on that particular EC2 server. Now, by default, every time you create a VPC, you will have a default security group assigned to it. Now, obviously, most environment that inbound traffic will be blocked, and then some outbound traffic will be allowed. A security group, for example, are acting as a firewall on EC2 instance. They regulate which port you can access, authorize IP range of either IPv4 or IPv6. It basically controls your inbound traffic, what is allowed from outside and what is allowed to go outside. Now keep in mind, security group does not secure your entire AWS cloud. It only secure the EC2 servers or load balancers, stuff like that. So there is one additional layer of security called network access list. We will talk about that later. That will give you one extra layer of security where you can control what traffic is allowed to come into your network. Now, security group is all about set of rules. You got inbound rules and you got outbound rules. Rules where you define what type of protocol is allowed, what would be their port range, and which source address that those traffic are allowed from. You can say that connection from these particular subnet will be allowed. Some cases can be denied. It all depends on your requirement. So you can assign a port. For example, let's say you can say port 22 will be open or allowed only if the traffic is coming from, let's say, your administrator's home PC or their laptop or they're from office network, for example. But for port 22, any other traffic like globally are not allowed within your server. So you have options to restrict where the source traffic can come from, whether it's coming from a particular IP, particular subnet, or you can nest one security group within another security group, as long as the other security group permits that. Same thing goes outbound. Outbound security group, you can restrict what traffic is allowed, where and what is not allowed. Now, you can reference one security group to another security group, so that you may want to, let's say, create a security group for department or particular type of web server, and then you can apply that to all the other web servers that you have. So this is like a nesting security group within another security group that you have. If the default security group does not meet your need, you can always create your own custom. Oops, my apology. Let me go back to my pen drive. Come on. All right, I'm gonna enable my where was I? Right there. As you can see, you can create your own custom security group if you do not want to use a default one, and you can create multiple security group if you want that reflect different role. For example, you can create a security group for web servers, you can create a security group for database and put more, you group those port into more meaningful ways, for sure, no problem. The only thing you have to keep in mind that is when you create your own custom security group, that they cannot start with the name SG dash. The reason behind that is those are already assigned to your group ID automatically, so something that you have no control of. Now whenever you create your own custom security group, by default allows all no inbound traffic, but all outbound traffic will be allowed by default. So your PC, if you assign to a server, your server will be able to communicate to the internet, but nobody can communicate to the server or access any services. So you do have to enable particular port if you want to. Now here is an example of a security group that I have created for you, and as you can see, the security group is a group ID that starts with SG. So that's the reason why you cannot name your security group SG. You can name whatever you want as long as it's a meaningful name, so that you can easily identify what the purpose of the security group is. Don't just call it a XYZ559041, which has no meaning to it. Now every time you create a security group, they are associated with a VPC, so you will see the VPC that security group is associated with, followed by the owner of the account, which is your AWS account number. Now as you can see below that there is a description where you can put a little description if you want to. Then you have the inbound rule, and then you got the outbound rule, and the good old tags that you can organize your searching capability or querying capability. Now the inbound rule will have a bunch of rules that you apply, so you can define the type of traffic as allowed, what protocol that they're going to use, what is their port range, either single port or range of port, and your source address, what source address are allowed to come into your network. You can put a little bit of a description for your own documentation purposes, but though is not necessary. Outbound port, as you can see, all traffic is allowed, so therefore you are able to send traffic to the worldwide. Now as you add security group, you will be able to define which source address are these rules apply. If you put the source address 0.0.0.0/0, that means it's wide open. Anybody can come in using that port number 2377. However, what if I want to allow traffic on a custom port that is coming from another security group? So I can say that whatever the others, I have a security group called X, and whatever is X allows, I will allow it too in my security group. So what I can do is that I can bring that security group as a source address, so that whatever is allowed on that particular group will be allowed on this group as well on port number 2377. Or you can define a particular source address as being the originating traffic, such as the DNS server where you want the Google DNS server to communicate with you, zone transfer, whatnot. So you have the option to customize it. You can put a little bit of descriptions if you want to, although it is not a mandatory. Now updating security rule, pretty much anything that you do in AWS, you can always from a web console, you can always do the same thing from your CLI command line. Now I'm going to give you some of the most useful common command line that you can use or should remember, but I'm not going to do the lab for you on this particular scenario. We do have a video labs on Cisco Solution Architect Associate, where you will learn how to use the command line to execute this command. So first of all, these are some of the command line. As you can see, it says authorized security group egress CLI, or you can use the Windows PowerShell. If you're using Windows PowerShell, then you would be using this command, grant EC2 security group egress. Now that means that these two commands are applied on the egress rule. That's the word, hence the word egress. Now if you want to update a description of a security group, what you can do is use the following two commands from the command line that allows you to update the description. If you want to update the description of egress, like outgoing interface command rules, then you can do that right through these commands right there. If you want to remove some group from ingress, then use these commands. Again, these are the most useful command: revoke security group ingress, revoke security group egress, for example. So practice as much as you can, and sometimes you may need to learn the CLI base as well as from the web, and the more you know, the better it is. Now what we're going to talk about is that there are certain custom rules that you may need to open from time to time. One of them, for example, is called rules for path MTU discovery, which basically says that when a traffic's MTU is more than what the originating host and receiving host can receive, what you can do is that the host will send a packet that is larger MTU of the receiving host, or that larger than the MTU of a device along the path receiving receiving host return. So in that case, what happened is your receiving host will send this message saying destination unreachable, fragmentation needed, do not fragments was set. So if you are sending traffic to me, let's say, and somehow the MTU size of the traffic is beyond what you and I can handle, my host will send a ICMP response to you saying that, well, destination is unreachable, fragmentation is needed, do not fragment was set. So in order to allow that to return back to you, we need to create a rule that allows ICMP protocol. Protocol number will be 1, type will be destination unreachable, fragment needed and do not set fragment must be checked, as well as the source IP address that we would like to allow. And this is an example how it is done. So the scenario like this, sometimes you may need to enable certain rules which has nothing to do with customers, has nothing to do with outside world. It is simply for the host to communicate within internally. So make sure you understand that, make sure you look at your routing environment, make sure you are able to understand what ports should be open, not just from an outside perspective, also from inside perspective. Okay, so that is what the security rules are going to do. Now I'm going to show you a demonstration of how we create a security rule and associate that rule with your EC2 server. Now as you can see right now, I am on my Amazon EC2, and I am currently right there into my portal. I do not have any I don't think I have any instance running right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a security group right now under EC2 security group. You will go to service EC2, and then you will click on security group on the left hand side, and right there I'm going to create a group. Let's just call a group right now called SG Solution Architect Associate Test. Okay, this is a test security group for Solution Architect Associate. Now I'm going to define a rule. As you can see, outbound rule by default automatically allowed, so I don't have to really do anything. For inbound, I need to allow certain things because by default all inbound is blocked. So right now, I'm going to allow SSH, and I'm going to allow HTTP. Okay, and a specific ICMP custom rule which says that I'm destination unreachable due to destination network fragmentation required because of that, and it's gonna, if it's coming from the host 11.64.21. so this is kind of a custom port that I need. So I can always say that this is for MTU size kind of redirections thing. All right, so you create these rules, something happens, the source needs to be CIDR. Okay, so here we go, I forgot to assign this. Now you notice how you define your two right here. One is your IPv4 and one is IPv6. If you're not using IPv6, I'll just simply mark it out, remove it, so that I don't have to worry about any IPv6 permissions or whatnot. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add a rule. Oh, sorry, my apology, not add a rule. Save the rule, create, and I have a rule created right somewhere here. I don't know, right there. That's the rule that I just created right now. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to launch an EC2 instance, and I'm going to associate that server with this group. So EC2, I'm going to create a launch on North Virginia region, and I'm going to use this called AMI. I can choose an AMI from the marketplace, totally up to me. I'm just going to choose one from the marketplace. Let's call this WordPress, and I'm going to choose this one. Okay, so click continue, and obviously you need to define its instance type. So I'm going to choose the free version. Configure detail instance details, and pretty much you'll select the default as it is. We're not going to worry about it. Make sure that auto assign public IP address is enabled. Click storage, make it a 10 gig is fine. Add tag. I'm not going to do that right now. Next step is security group. This is where we're going to say, okay, create one or select one. So I'm going to select one, and I'm going to select the one that I have created, which I believe is right there. Okay, right there. As you can see, it is using these 3 ports right now. HTTP is allowed, and SSH is allowed, and a custom ICMP rule is allowed. Click review launch, and it's going to give you kind of a warning that, hey, your SSH is wide open, so you should not be doing that, blah blah blah, which is fine. This is not a security auditing course, so we're not going to worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to click on launch, and yes, I have the key, although I don't. Okay, so now you have a server coming up. We're going to take about 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to go to review instance, and right now, yep, it's coming up. So let's wait for a few minutes and for the servers to come up, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so we have the server up, so let's go and try to see if this is going to work. I'm going to copy this URL that was provided by the EC2 server, and I'm going to paste it right here. And right now you can see a hello world blog. Now if I go back to my security group, let's say I go back to the security group right there, and I choose the one that I created, solution architect. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove the HTTP. Okay, I'm going to modify that, and I'm going to remove the HTTP and save. Okay, and save. What I'm going to do, I'm going to close the browser, open it again, paste the link, and right now, as you can see, it is no longer connecting because security group is blocking traffic. What if I want to restrict the HTTP access only from the network that I'm currently in, or from my own IP address? So first of all, to be able to do that, you need to find out what is your current IP address is. So I can find that out by Googling it. I can type the command IP address, my IP address, and you will see this is the current public IP address that Google is giving back to you. And I want to only allow traffic from coming from here. So I can go to copy that and go back to my security group, modify that, add the HTTP back, but with the source address being this. That only HTTP is allowed if the source address happens to be this. Okay, so only HTTP allow from this network, okay, or IP address. Save it, and if I go back to my page, which previously says not reachable, if I refresh that, voila. Okay, so you can see that by creating a security rule, you can restrict access to a server, and you can restrict allow certain traffic or not. So I hope you found this video to be useful. Play with this and make sure that you get the most. There will be a lot more about security group that we're going to talk about as we go through into this course. So make sure that you spend as many time and resource possible to learn as much as you can on security group. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next video.